NESL is India's first information utility and is registered with the Insolvency Bankruptcy Board of India, that is IBBI, under the aegis of IBC. The company has been set up by leading banks and public institutions. The role is to facilitate time-bound resolution by providing verified information to adjudicating authorities that do not require further authentication. Extension of information utility facilities under IBC through digital document execution, IP services, and MSME initiatives and its advantages is the topic for the day. Imagine a situation where a document can be executed within 5 minutes. A legal document, the stamp duties is taken care, and it is executed in 5 minutes sitting at your places. So that is what is the platform now we are talking about, and NESL is going to facilitate the whole thing. And now I request Mr. Vivek Hegde to give few words before we hand over to the speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Om Prakash ji. I hope I am audible. Yeah. Very good afternoon to one and all. On behalf of Bangalore chapter of ICSI, I welcome each one of you who are participating in this virtual session on extension of IU utility under IBC through DDE, IP services, and MSME initiatives. We are very happy to join hands with BCIC, Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, in hosting this virtual session. I thank Dr. Om Prakash, who happens to be one of our members, and his entire team for leading this. And on behalf of Bangalore chapter of ICSI and all the participants, I extend welcome to Sri S. Raman, Managing Director and CEO of NESL and his entire team to this session. And we were having a chat. He was mentioning the DDE, digital document execution, is the main focus of this session, which in my opinion is the need of the hour, because we are all facing many challenges during this lockdown, and we know how difficult to execute a document, complete the documentation, especially which requires stamp duty to be paid, papers to be procured. So we are facing a lot of challenges. So this is the high time NESL has come up with this DDE, digital document execution process. I'm sure Mr. Raman and his team will throw more light on this topic. And I thank each one of you again. And over to you, sir. Mr. Ramanji.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, my gratitude to BCIC and the ICSI for giving us this opportunity to interact with all of you. It is indeed, probably the right forum and manner in which we are interacting sets the tone for what I am going to talk about. It truly is, the result of circumstances beyond anyone's control. But as they say, in every dark cloud, there is a silver lining. And I think the one big takeaway that's going to happen from whatever problems that currently beset us is the fact that all of us are making leaps into the digital world. The ability to reach just about anybody sitting anywhere else removed by many miles and transact and do business with such a person is really where we would like to be headed. And I think as business persons, all of us would much appreciate that platforms are created which allow for business to expand in this virtual world. Let me quickly take you through what is really the information utility about. All of you are fully aware of IBC. In fact, Mr. Om Prakash and I have shared the platform on IBC in certain conferences, and we've probably, I may even have met several of you in certain IBC conferences. The ICSI is a close partner of the information utility because we interact often with the IPA of the ICSI, as well as my interaction with other members of the ICSI. All of us are professionals. We are chartered accountants, we are in insolvency professionals, we are company secretaries, we run businesses. So all of us are completely aware of how the financial world is positively impacted by the digital world and the way technology has gone ahead. Information utility is an evidence repository. So I choose these words very carefully. It's a very new concept. IBC is about 3.5 years old. Information utility is about 3 years old. Operationally, we have done 2 years of operations. And I say information utility is a repository of evidence. The evidentiary value of information utility comes from the fact that persons who are putting financial contracts or operational contracts on the information utility are doing so after having seen and agreed and digitally signed the contract. Both parties to the contract are bound by the law to put their digital signature and accept, or put the digital signature and dispute equally. You may like to dispute some terms of the contract. In the financial world, today we are sitting on 78 lakh crore of borrowings across the banking sector. The banking sector plus the NBFC sector. So when I refer to banking sector, please assume it to be the regulated entities under the RBI. The banking sector has put in 70 lakh crore of outstanding loans given to the corporate sector. Today, NESL Information Utility is the largest repository of credit information in the country. It is larger than any other, be it CERSAI, be it RBI's own facility, the in-house facility, be it whatever a credit information company may be having. IU has therefore put out several reports which the banking sector has started using. And of course, all of you will understand these are credit monitoring reports. The IBC was meant to be an instrument for bringing together borrower and lender in a better form of contract and negotiation. I will not get into the aspects of the resolution under IBC because that is something which is out of scope of today's discussion. All of you are anyway aware of how that works. The information utility is therefore IBC's gift to the country as a neutral platform for agreement, execution, and continuous monitoring of contracts between lenders and borrowers. Equally, as you all know, under IBC, operational creditors and their counterparties are also eligible to put information on the information utility. So when I talk about 70 lakh crore of lending given by banks to companies, which is filed in the information utility, there are also in the region of over 600 in operational creditors that have used the information utility at various points of time for putting in their default filing or what is known as unpaid invoices. Our attempt is therefore to now expand the services of the information utility across both dimensions, the financial creditors as well as the operational creditors. Or let me put it differently, the financial contracts and the operational contracts. Therefore, whether it be NCLT, whether it be a civil court, a district's court, SARFAESI action, whichever legal forum, it could even be an arbitration, every legal forum will accept the electronic evidence stored by the information utility. So whenever evidence is taken out from the information utility, it is called a record of default. That is the terminology given by the IBC. But the record of default is nothing but an enumeration of the evidence of the contract between two parties. And it gives the entire information across the journey. When a submitter submits information, the counterparty looks at the information, disputes it or accepts it or ignores it. So for the information of everybody, the evidence of the information utility is prima facie evidence, and Supreme Court has held it so. It can be used therefore in any forum. We take it upon ourselves as a national duty to now extend the use of the information utility across all the dimensions, both financial contracts as well as operational contracts. What happened about a year ago was that the chairperson of IBBI, Dr. Sahu, being a person of great vision, he envisaged that the way forward for the country is all about DMAT. So I had the, in fact, opportunity of working with Dr. Sahu at the time when he was member in SEBI. I was also in SEBI for a longish period. I was there. So we have all got the experience and the knowledge of the capital markets and how the dematerialization of shares took place. Dr. Sahu, of course, was one of the pioneers of that movement. What we are talking about is information utility as a DMAT for loan accounts. So it may not be that I have got many loans. Of course, corporate entities would have several loans, funded, non-funded. The information utility account or the IU account is nothing but a DMAT account for loans. So this is another thing which I want to bring in. The first one I said is IU is a evidence repository. Anybody entitled to take the evidence can take the evidence and present it in a legal forum. The second thing I'm saying is IU is a DMAT account for loans. The DMAT means it is paperless. Today the IU as per law functions without any paper. It is only about electronic information flowing. So Dr. Sahu and myself and the then DFS secretary, we had a discussion and it was felt creation of a digital document repository is something that will hold good stead in the future. And today we are talking 1 year down the road, and we have already managed to bring the concept of the digital document execution of the IU before several of the large banks of this country. I will now get specifically into the issues of digital document execution, because the way I see it is that all of us doing business of any kind, all of us who are professionals of any kind, we will definitely come across the need for this and use it well. So you and I, we are sitting in remote locations. I want to get an agreement signed by one of you sitting where you are. The agreement calls for a stamping. Now, as per the Indian Stamp Act, amended by the State Stamp Act and the State Stamp Duty rules, which differs across different states, we have a requirement of stamping the document. This is an individual case. Now, think about a case where a bank is giving 1,000 loans a day. In fact, the SBI chairman was telling me that the SBI does 10,000 loans a day on its YONO platform. Now, to get 10,000 loans stamped and signed by the borrower is a huge task. So, all of you aware of banking know that banks are full of paper and documents, and going through a bank and getting a documentation done with a bank can take a long time, can take 2 days, it can take 15 days. So it's really a struggle for banks to be able to complete their documentation. They wish to give a loan, the borrower is extremely credit worthy. Approving a loan probably will take 48 hours, but doing the documentation may take several days. So what we have created with the help of several people in the system, with the guidance of so many banks that we have dealt with, it's about a machine to machine interaction. So the bank comes onto the information utility platform, pushes in through what is known as an API mode, pushes in one loan after the other. It is completely machine based. There is no human interaction in any of this. The loans come onto the IU platform. We have asked the banks to give us the PDF document, which basically contains the loan agreement. It could be the loan agreement, it could be the hypothecation agreement, it could be 4 or 5 documents. They are all put together as a single PDF. Alongside, the bank also gives the details of who are the parties or who are the borrowers. So there'll be a list of names of the parties that have to sign. It could be borrower, it could be co-obligant, it could be the guarantor, it could be two persons signing as the principal debtor. It could be a variety of combination of things. Once the information utility has received this information along with the PDF document from the bank, it sends out a message to each one of these borrowers in the sequence that the bank wishes them to sign. The borrower comes in, we do a check of the borrower using the Aadhaar OTP. The borrower comes, looks at the document, accepts the document. The document then goes through what is known as the platform of the Stockholding Corporation. Stockholding Corporation handles the e-stamping in 21 union territories and states. There are a few large states which do not deal with Stockholding Corporation, have their own system. But Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Delhi, Rajasthan, many large states have Stockholding Corporation doing their e-stamping. So the platform of NESL has already been integrated with that of Stockholding. The document goes to that particular state where the stamping is desired. The money is paid from the wallet that NESL has already got with Stockholding. The bank in turn has paid NESL. The amount, the consideration, the parties, all that information is sent to the Stockholding Corporation. They pay the money to the state revenue and they get what is known as a unique digital stamp certificate. This comes to the NESL platform. NESL applies this digital certificate, the stamp certificate on every single page of the document, and this is proof of having paid the stamp duty. The NESL then proceeds to create the entire document by taking the agreement and starting the agreement on the lower half of the first page as is traditionally done. And this document is now e-stamped and it is ready. It is then presented before each of the signatories for their respective signatures. So I have tried to explain to you as briefly as possible the actual process flow of how the e-stamping and e-sign takes place. We have measured this with one of the large banks in the country which has actually successfully completed the testing. It takes about 6 to 7 minutes depending on how quickly the persons involved react. Each signatory can take their own sweet time. It will obviously delay the entire process. But if people are ready, they can complete the process in about 6 to 7 minutes, all sitting in the comfort of your respective offices or homes. So, from a bank's point of view, they can push in as many loans as possible in a day, complete the entire paperwork on that very day. It's possible. And this is where there is a massive saving of time and money for the banking system. Now, let me take this same example and bring it across as operational creditors. There is two persons, two companies are interested in doing business. They want to agree upon whatever business transaction that they have finalized. They want the legal documentation to be done. As an operational creditor, they are entitled to come and file it on the information utility. They will follow a very similar process. It will probably not be a machine to machine, but it will be a human intervention where the respective fields that are needed to be filled, the details of the party 1, details of the party 2, and they will upload the PDF document, which is the agreement that they need signed. And once it comes, it is captured on the NESL platform, and exactly the same process will follow. So what we're talking about is the ease of doing business. At the end of the day, in all my interactions with various government officials at the highest levels, we have basically gone and presented this to various different fora, including the Niti Aayog, the PMO, where we wanted to discuss and display how this is taking India forward in terms of ease of doing business. So you can all imagine that completion of the stamping and the e-signing is all possible on the platform of the information utility, whether it is for financial contracts or whether it is for operational contracts. So where are we currently? There are 28 states and about 7 union territories. We have been tackling all the states to convince them to make the necessary changes in the law, because the permission of the state government is needed for moving from e-stamping to digital e-stamping. So in fact, many of you also may ask that already there is something called e-stamping. Where is the need for doing anything more digital? The same question that I also asked when I first embarked upon this venture, and I was sitting with the MD of Stockholding, and he said the E part of e-stamping is actually a misnomer, because the payment can be made online, but the output of the stamp certificate is still a physical output. So we are now in that process of moving from e-stamping to digital e-stamping, where the entire process, payment as well as the actual stamp certificate, is entirely in the digital mode. This is very, very critical from many points of view. So once again, I put myself in the situation of the banking sector, because I mean, just very briefly, I can tell you that in the country today, probably 4 crore loans are given in a year. I'm talking about all varieties, retail. Obviously, retail will make up 98% of all loans by number. Value-wise, of course, corporate loans would be much larger. But we're looking at 4 crore loans being transacted in the country on an annual basis, including NBFCs. You can imagine the kind of cost that the bank incurs for one loan documentation. There are innumerable indirect costs which the bank faces, from sending a runner to the borrower's office and getting signatures, sending a runner to the stockholding office or the registrar's office to get a stamp paper. So For 4 crores, you can even imagine that if we save 200 rupees per loan transaction, you're talking a fairly sizable saving for the banking sector. And that's really the transformation that we're looking at, both in terms of cost and time. There's a very large effect that this will have. We presented this to the RBI Committee on Secondary Loans. So there was a committee set up by the RBI on a secondary market for loans. So as you would know that retail loans especially are bundled up together and created as, um, kind of SPV products. It's not exactly in the way the mortgage-backed assets were created in the time of the financial crisis, but the ability to bundle loans of retail nature and sell it to another bank is something which is very common abroad. India still has not seen too much of it. NBFCs do a few of these transactions with banks. So the fact that there is a digital document repository in the form of the information utility, it is so easy for Punjab National Bank to simply take 1,000 loans of a particular nature, mark it on the information utility, pass it on to Bank of Baroda or SBI and say, this is the portfolio that I want to sell, you may have a look at it. So the ability to understand what is it that I am buying as an asset, as a bundle of loans, which is nothing but an asset that one bank may buy from another bank. There's a immense information enrichment that happens and information available at the tip of your fingers. So potential buyers will simply be shown that this is the profile of the asset or the underlying loans of the asset which is being sold, and they can easily take their decision. So the ability to take data and put it in particular bundles, put it in particular packets, to present it in different ways is extremely powerful. So the need for a digital document repository is something that the RBI has very clearly brought out in its committee report, where it looked at what the information utility is doing and mentioned that the information utility could be the central loan contract registry. So at this point, if there is actually somebody who has any question to ask, I'll be happy to take, because there's a lot of process I mentioned. So if there's any question at this stage, let me know, otherwise I'll proceed. Sure. So let me continue. So when we are now looking at the ability of both financial contracts and operational contracts being easily taken across on a common neutral platform for execution and safekeeping. And therefore, when I was discussing with Dr. Om Prakash and Mr. Ganesh, and I was mentioning that it's a collective effort, and in terms of Karnataka, we have had a detailed discussion with the Karnataka government, with the ACS Finance, and the Karnataka government in its budget, which was announced in the middle of March. There is one item in the budget which says that the government is planning to proceed with online services of stamping and registration through the platform of National E-Governance Services Limited. So this, of course, was done just before we went into a lockdown. And I think ever since the lockdown, the focus of governments across the world have moved only to law and order and health. But we are very hopeful, and therefore we would be more than glad to get the benefit of the BCIC in taking this forward with the government of Karnataka with the office of the IGR and pushing forward the changes that are needed to be made in the stamp duty rules and in the procedure for ensuring that in Karnataka this facility is made available for the benefit of everybody. So what we are really saying is that Rajasthan government has already issued the orders to the stockholding corporation for a full digital execution or a digital stamping on the NESL SHIL platform, that is the stockholding platform. The similar order needs to be passed by various governments. And I am in touch, close touch with Tamil Nadu government, Delhi government, UP, uh, Haryana. These are the few states which we are hoping that we'll be able to move more quickly and get these states to also come on board. But Karnataka government is one of those very, I would say, pioneering governments when it comes to digital measures and initiatives. So we also hope that we'll be able to, with your help, get this pushed through more quickly. So Canara Bank being the bank in Karnataka, in fact, when we started our operations in the Bangalore office, it was Canara Bank which had kindly given us space in one of its offices. Of course, now we have moved to our own office further on down on MG Road. But the point is that when we present this to a large bank like Canara Bank, they're very, very excited. They're excited by the fact that e-sign can be used extensively. And e-sign is something which will really be used more and more going forward. So in fact, Canara Bank and SBI, both of them, when we made presentations to them, they looked at the fact that document execution can be made easy. They also looked at the fact that why can't my customers, as part of the banking operations, they can give me a e-sign on a document and they don't need to come to the bank anymore. So, if one starts thinking about it, the number of use cases that exist for the ability to conduct an e-sign. And when I say the word e-sign, I mean as per the Information Technology Act, Schedule 2, it could be the digital signature certificate or the Aadhaar e-sign. So both of these are the valid ways of affixing a digital signature. Let me take you back to the example of a bank loan. Sometimes bank loans, one has to make 10 signatures, even 20 signatures. Housing loans, maybe sometimes it is even more than that. Now you can think of all the documents being put together as one PDF, and a single e-sign goes across the entire document. And the beauty of e-sign is that once it is signed, there is a hash that is made of the document, and even if a comma or full stop is changed in that document, the hash will become invalid. And that is how we detect that has the electronic document been tampered with or not. So once a sign is done, if that document is further tampered with, then we will find that the signature shows that there is a change in the document. And this can be seen as easily as putting the document on an Adobe platform, and the signature can be read very easily on the Adobe platform. So using these Adobe software. So digital signatures are something that are here to stay. You can think of the fact that you want to make a change in your uh, account particulars with a bank. All you have to do is fill in a form online, download it as a PDF, put your e-sign using the NESL platform, put your e-sign on it and send it to the bank, or the bank will basically send the document to you for doing an e-sign. So it is all about moving forward and making use of the digital technology. So what NESL has tried to put together, and this is really at the stage of, what I would say now, launching it in a bigger way. It is about carrying forward digital platforms and digital technologies for the benefit of the masses. All of us will be beneficiaries of things like digital e-stamp and digital e-sign. So if you once again put it into the larger canvas, an information utility serves as a demat account for loans. Loans are nothing but digital documents lying in your demat account. So you have got your digital document lying with you at all points of time, and you can refer to it as and when you want. You can send your information to another bank. Suppose a bank wishes to know, show me your existing loans. You can easily send it from the information utility, share it with the other bank saying, these are my loans, this is the information utility, and this is the ultimate proof. Because beyond the information utility, there is no other proof that you need to show to a bank that these are my existing loans and these are the outstanding balances on my existing loans. So for corporate accounts, what banks are doing today in the IU is they're updating the balance on a monthly basis. For individual accounts, they may update the balance on an annual basis. So at any point of time, it is possible for an individual to know, or a company to know, what are the exact balances, and the borrower agrees with those balances or it disputes those balances. I therefore take you to another very interesting part of the information utility called dispute resolution mechanism. Let us leave aside IBC for the moment, but we all know that IBC currently is for corporate resolution. Very soon, resolution for partnership, proprietorship, and finally even individual loans will come out. It will all happen probably in the space of another 6 to 8 months, given the fact that some time has been lost in the last 2 months. But we are looking at resolution of all loans, resolution of borrowings of any kind. And resolution only means agreement between the two parties that yes, this is the outstanding, maybe this is the adjustment or a restructuring of the loan that is needed to be done. It can be done with mediators. So one of the things being looked at for individual loans is there will be a set of mediators. In fact, people like professionals who are chartered accountants and company secretaries could well be mediators tomorrow, as they are insolvency professionals today. The whole area is expanding very rapidly, and all that a mediator does is that pulls the information from the information utility. The entire history of the loan is available before the mediator. There is no further proof, there is no calling for any documents. It is digital information available with a mediator, which is duly signed by both parties at various points of time during the journey of the loan. This gives the ease of digital information to a third party, which then will find it much easier, much less expensive to resolve the issues between the disputing parties. So the whole concept of information utility producing evidence for dispute resolution is something which is already being built in our system. In another 3 months, we'll be completely ready to be able to meet the needs of the economy as and when the IBBI comes out with its new regulations on dispute resolution or individual loan resolution. So we are truly now in that world of digital information helping for all types of loans. Let me also inform you that in amongst financial creditors, it's not only banks, but it's even private money lenders or private companies lending to another company. So one company giving intercorporate advances to another company, that information is also filed. Money lenders could file their information in the utility when they lend money to other people. So the number of persons who can utilize the IU is actually very large, either as a submitter of information or as a borrower or somebody who has taken a loan. So what I've really tried to bring before you is the fact that we are moving to an era of digital document execution, digital e-stamping, digital signatures, digital evidence of any contract. So all contracts will be in digital form. We're talking now about operational creditors. Any company is always an operational creditor as well as an operational debtor. As a buyer, I'm buying goods on credit. As a seller, I'm giving goods to somebody else and providing credit. This ecosystem is also a very important ecosystem. I will leave the details for my colleague to talk about when he presents the section on the operational creditors. But suffice it to say that the ability for two parties in the economy to safely do business and lodge their information in the information utility is really the design of the law. So we are all sure and we are safe that our information lies with this trusted, neutral government body which holds the information and then provides the information to such persons who are entitled to use it. As an operational creditor, your buyer, you have full sight of all that the buyer is doing, because if any other person were to file a default against your buyer, you will also get that information from the IU that so and so person has filed a default against buyer ABC, and that information also comes to you as an early warning signal. So we have been dealing with a lot of the industry associations in the country, talking to them how to encourage the services of the IU and make it more and more useful to the operational creditors. So maybe I should stop at this stage, given the fact that it's already 10 to 5, and I would definitely like enough time for questions. So what we can possibly do is that if we have questions right now, we could take the questions. I think, is that a question coming? So if somebody could just alert me. I saw one question which came on the screen. Right. So
this
we
is
have
from so this is from Mr. B.R. Vishwas.
Hello.
Ramanan sir, this question is from Mr.
Yeah.
B.R. Vishwas. How is this different
Right.
from credit bureau like say
Correct.
CIBL, CRP,
Correct.
etc.,
Correct.
wherein financial institutions have access to the data part, from advantage wherein an operational creditor can upload the default information?
That's right. So this is a question that the IU has faced from day one, ever since we went around and started meeting the banks to tell and make awareness campaigns as to what is the IU doing. There is a very important difference. The information utility is purely a repository of authenticated data. So the fact that there is an authentication being done, and authentication merely is digital signatures of all parties. So the law, the IBC as well as the IT Act, they have something called non-repudiable. So the fact that a digital signature is affixed on a particular document makes it non-repudiable. That means the onus is really upon the person who has signed digitally to say why that information is not correct, having already made a digital signature. So it in a way operates like an estoppel principle in law. Now, the information utility therefore is, as I said, designed to be a repository of all credit data held as authenticated information accessible to everybody who needs to use it. An information utility will not do a scoring. An information utility will not sell the data for its analytics. I am debarred from giving this data to anybody except for those persons who are written in the regulations as eligible to access the information. So a bank accesses the information of a borrower by declaring that he has the consent of that company, and then has the entire debt profile of that company as it exists in the IU. As I said, 70 lakh crore of borrowing by companies is in the IU. So an SBI will declare consent that I want the information of company ABC. I have got the consent of company ABC. A email goes to that company informing them that SBI has accessed your data. So it is really about data access. So what are banks doing? They are using the API mode of data communication and pulling information from the IU for the various companies that they are interested in. IU does not do a scoring. So I think that's a very big difference that needs to be understood. And the data spread of an IU is far greater than that of any other body. So debenture trustees, which hold investments of mutual funds and insurance companies in corporate debt, the debenture trustees have started loading their information of mutual funds on the IU. Commercial paper. Finally, public deposits. Many companies raise public deposits. That information is lying with the MCA. So that information will also soon come into the IU. So IU is really a superset of credit data. So I think that is really the difference which the law has envisaged between the operations of an IU and that of a credit bureau. The credit bureau will never hold the documents. The IU is mandated to hold the documents. Now, IU did not ask banks to put in scanned documents of the loan because it does not make any sense. It's not usable data. So what we are doing now with the document execution on the IU platform itself, we will be holding the metadata of that loan, therefore making it readable and therefore making it useful for banks to slice and dice that data the way the bank wants to do it. IU will not do it. The bank will pull data and then do the analytics at the side of the bank. That's the way it will happen. I also see another question from Shilpa BM, which says, how does IU help in the IBC process? So I'll very quickly address it. I did not talk about it because I was focusing more on the other aspects of the IU. But the record of default is really the primary evidence that any person can take, file it along with their application and go to NCLT. In fact, today IU has completed the integration with the NCLT. So we have, when you go online on NCLT today, because e-filing has started in the NCLT, you have the ability to pull the record of default from the IU as part of your e-filing application process. So the NCLT has integrated with information utility for pulling a record of default at the choice of the applicant. So the process of arriving at authenticated default is the process of the information utility. I will not get into the specifics of it probably at this time. I'll probably take Mr. Vishwas is saying, if the default resolution is resolved, can IU remove the default information by the operational creditor? Excellent question. IU will never touch any data, nor will IU ever read any data. So when something is resolved, either of the parties has to file that the case is resolved. Today, when a bank loan expires, the bank files a closure on the IU. So if a bank has submitted 10,000 loans to IU, on a regular basis, bank files closure notices on the IU saying out of 10,000, now 1,000 loans have been closed. Similarly, an operational creditor will have to show that the amount is fully paid. So maybe the buyer will file on the IU saying that amount is fully paid, and ability of the buyer to write the details of the payment is available on the IU system. So that is how the evidence is created. IU will not take a judgment whether a case is open or closed. IU will only hold evidence. It is for any dispute resolution mechanism to look at the evidence and decide whether operational creditor has been fully paid or not fully paid. So let me hand it over to my colleague, Mr. Chetan. He will take you through more details regarding the operational creditor and what we have created. So, and then of course, once he finishes, then Mr. Shankar will talk briefly about how IU is helping the insolvency professionals, and then we can take further questions after that. So over to you, Chetan.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Let me go through the presentation on NESL. As my boss, Mr. Esserman, has already given them more information about the NESL. We'll touch only briefly on some of these slides and more focus on the MSME part. So, just to brief you, NESL is registered as a union government company. It's having 17 stakeholders, 13 are banks, 3 are the insurance companies, and 1 are the depository. 65% stake is held by the public sector entities, so that's why it's registered as a union government company. So IU is under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, regulated by the IBBI, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. We have a compliances, like we have a full-fledged regulations for ourselves. So IBBI issued regulations 2017, and we are totally guided by the IBBI. So IBBI have a technical committee who's fixed a standard for us, and we are following those standards. Technically, our system is made on those standards itself. So this is a journey of NESL. We have already more than 95% of the loans given to company, that is costing totaling around 64 lakhs crore. And many of the people is taking a record of default from our system. I'll go more on a process in that way. So if you see that this is a schematic diagram of the NESL. So any financial creditors like banks, NBFC, or any big HNI customers who are giving a loan to their borrowers and charging interest. So there's a definition. We see financial creditors are those people who are giving a financial debt. The definition of financial debt is whoever is giving a amount and charging some interest. There's a time value of money, so they are charging some interest, that is called as a financial credit. And operational creditors who are giving goods and services and expecting the amount against the invoices will come in future. So that is the operational debt. It is mandatory for the financial creditors to upload this information in our system, and it is optional for operational creditors wherever they feel that there's some risk in remitting from the buyer side, they're remitting the amount, they can upload information to our system. So they are uploading this information in our system. Once we in NESL, we are receiving that information. We call this information in a tabular format. We call it a Form C. So financial creditor or operational creditor are uploading data Form C format to NESL. NESL in turn send authentication request to borrower, or in case of MSME, operational creditor, buyer. If there are more than one party to the debt, like a borrower, co-borrower, guarantor, so we are sending the authentication request to all of them. They will visit our website, they will see this our information available on our system, and they authenticate the information. When authenticating, they will affix their digital signature, either token-based digital signature or other e-sign. They can raise a dispute also if they find that information is incorrect or there's a discrepancy in the information submitted by the buyer or about the supplier or the bank or lender. They can raise a dispute also by mentioning that. So this information will be captured in our system. This is a two-way communication platform. Even buyer himself can come on our application and upload the information against the supplier, or as a borrower, I took a amount from loan from some of the bank. I can come to NESL website and upload the information against my lender. So this is a two-way communication information. Bank is uploading, you can authenticate or dispute. You can also upload the information against the bank, presenting your view of the information. So it will be all will be recorded against the loan debt number, and history will be in our system. As a boss said, this is a dispute resolution mechanism. When party A is saying something, party B is disputing, party A have a chance to means give a defend on that thing. They can put their own remarks over there with their digital signature. So communication will happen between both the parties. All the communication trail will be available to the educating authorities to take a decision in any subject matter on this. We'll more discuss about these reports, what these reports are available in NESL portal. First is the debt query system, debt query report. This is ability to query any party for the existence of his debt. So you can just search any of the PAN. If the information against that PAN is available in our portal, we will prompt you that information. We will say the information is available, yes, as per as an operational creditor or financial creditor, or whether default is uploaded or not. We will not share what is the rate of interest or outstanding. These information will not come in that way. Second is the default alert. There's a section 21 of the IBBR regulations where it's saying that NESL will send a default alert to all other lenders of the entity. So now let's assume you are uploading default information against party A. In our system, if any other bank has uploaded information against the party A, we will disseminate the default alert to them, and we will inform that your customer has been defaulted to other institutions or entities. We will inform them. We will send a default alert only when the process of the regulation 21 is complete. So there are processes established over there. First, we will send on an email. We will send a if email is bounced, we will send a physical. We will send a RPAD letter to the defaulter. After following that process, complete process, we will send this default alert. Credit facility report. This is a 360-degree view of for the across credit market. And this report is capturing all the information of the financial debt or operational debt, exposure as a debtor, co-obligant or guarantor. So this information, whether even trustees information is uploaded in our platform, that information will be also available over there. Record of default. Now, record of default is the requirement under the CIRP procedure. If you refer to educating authority rules, where when you are submitting the application to the educating authorities under the CIRP, you are required to submit a record of default while submission of the form itself. Record of default can be generated in our system online. It will cover all the communication trail. It will mention that what is the status of authentication against the default submission. So you can download this report from the platform. Then authentication track report. This is a single number as an indicator. How is the debtor's behavior? Whether does debtor is authenticating all the information on our platform, or merely just passing this information and not acting anything on the default submission. These are the certain notices available on NCLT website. NCLT's notice board, where they are asking for the record of default while submitting the case to their respective bank. So this is the first is from the Bangalore NCLT, and the other is from the Mumbai NCLT. So these are something pamphlets we already sent to all the IPs, all the lenders as well as all the borrowers. What is the benefit of the default alert? First of all, the default alert create a lot of impact. So it is helping banks to do a proper credit monitoring over there. See, there are many CICs companies or other credit reports available. Those reports are not covering the operational default. Those reports are not covering the behavior of the customer against any report on that thing. But NESL CFR report or a data alert is giving you a more authenticated default report, and after the process of that thing, it is helping to bring the credit discipline among the customer. Now moving to the specifically for the MSMEs, for the operational creditors, and I'm much sure that you all are aware about the Samadhan portal that is under the MSME Act. So under the MSME Act, if any supplier is MSME, every buyer is required to clear their dues within a 45 days. Or after that, the supplier can put a complaint in a Samadhan portal, and in a Samadhan portal, the district councils will be set up, and they will see the case, and they can give an award. An award could be 3 times of the interest against bank rent interest as a penalty or as an award to that thing. So with the MSME ministry, with the help of the and guidance of the MSME ministry, we integrated this Samadhan portal with the NESL Live. Now, any supplier who is going to the Samadhan portal to put a request, there is an option to give a consent that your information will be shared with the NESL also, and this information will be, once you are giving this consent, Samadhan will push this information to NESL, and a customer will be invited to the NESL portal. The supplier will come, register. He will complete the digital signature on data came from the Samadhan. He will upload the copy of the invoice and payment details, and the demand notice will be generated and sent to the buyer for his action on that thing. So this is the integration with that thing. You will come from the Samadhan portal. The request will come to the IU. Now IU registration by the supplier, then submission of the Form C or demand notice, authentication request to the respond for their action on that thing. If respondent is not doing, means buyer is not taking any action, after completion of regulation 21 of the IBBI rules, we will declare them as a deemed to be accepted over there. So that's the thing, and then we will broadcast that information to all other lenders of the defaulter. So this is helping MSMEs to recover the money fast in the system. The other important thing, now we have introduced the demand notice option to all the operational creditors. If you are like MSME or you are an operational creditor, when you are maybe you are not a legally expert and you are not in a position to send a demand notice as per the required format of the educating authority. Because in the educating authority rules, the format of demand notice is already prescribed. So you are taking a help from the lawyers or people who are working with the legal firm. So now what we have given a feature in our application, you can simply visit the NESL application and enter the details against your buyer with the details of the outstanding amount, upload the copy of the unpaid invoices and generate a demand notice, send through a demand notice, or you can download and send via the physical way of courier or a RPAD, register of post also. So this facility is extended to all the operational creditors. You can utilize that thing also. Now, another use of the information utility is for a resolution professional. So all resolution professional or insolvency professional, if you can register on our application at free of cost, you can be a registered user of NESL information utility. Anytime you get any case or assignment from the NCLT, you can request for the linkage with the corporate. You will put the request. Our operations team will validate those information with the NCLT order, and we will give you access. Once you got the access, you can access all the debt information against that corporate debtor available in the IU system. Now this information is free of cost, online, so no need of any paper movement over there. And third is it will be helpful for the claim verification. So even there could be some of the creditors available in our system. Those are not put any claim or any claim during the claim window over there. So you can reach to the lenders and ask to put a claim in our portal. We are working on we are very soon launching an insolvency case system. This will be very helpful for the resolution professional who are working as a resolution professional for under the CIRP against the corporate debtor. Now, if you see for the resolution professional, there are a lot of works involved in a scheduled time within a scheduled timelines. Like you have to form a COC, you have to ask for the claims, you have to arrange for, you have to create a list of liabilities or a committee of creditors. We can say you have to do a lot of meetings, you have to take a decisions, you have to follow a lot of compliances regarding them. You have to create an asset book also. You have to get it asset verified. You have to appoint valuers. Valuers will give their reports. Now you have to you have to host the valuation reports over there. Evaluate those valuation reports. You have to create an information memorandum. So resolution, you have to prepare for the resolution plan. So you create an information memorandum. You will invite for the resolution applicants to come and give a bid and submit the resolution plans for the revival of the company. How you want to resolve this issue. You have to do an evaluation of the applications received from the multiple resolution applicants. Either you will accept or you will reject, but there should be a proper evaluation over there. If something is not going right, then liquidation. The appointment of liquidator, you have to give access to the certain concerned person. You have to do a lot of due diligence, whom you want to give access, whom you don't want to give access, and then you have to maintain the auction log. You have to do a distribution of funds. So resolution applicant is fully occupied throughout the CIRP process. In between, you have to maintain a lot of reports. You have to submit minutes of the COC company. You have to do a e-votings log. You have to maintain logs, cost sheet, non-compliances, grievances. There are a lot of regulatory reportings. Every week you have to upload. You have to give a report to the IPA. You have to give a report to the COC. You have to give a report to the IBPIS. So there's a lot of clerical over there also. So what we want, what we vision as a NESL information utility, we want to be a center place of this ecosystem where there should be a one-stop solution where as a resolution applicant you can access the information, you can manage your case end-to-end in our system itself. We will provide you a virtual data room also where you can store all your information, because if you are a resolution applicant, you have to maintain information in two different geographically locations to continue the BCP, the business continuity plan. So we will provide you that services. We will provide you a secure storage, virtual storage. If you want interim finance, you can send an invitation through this portal itself. And in future, if you want to do a liquidation, you can use the auction platform, NESL platform itself. So we want to bring this kind of one-stop solution. The first step in that, within a few days, we are going to launch this IP model, which will be an end-to-end model where you can complete CIRP process within a timeline. It will create a more transparency. It will give you a more efficiency. So this system will facilitate your end-to-end work in that way. So these are features. I will not go in a detail, but I would ask to send this PPT with you. These are features of the virtual data room. I want to attract your attention on this, the use of as a IU information as an external confirmation. This will help in our auditing the governance part. So IBC is allowing the auditors of the debtor can get the access of the IU as a registered user. You can view the information of the against the corporate debtors available in the IU system. So CS can be registered on our platform as authorized user of your companies, your respective customer or client, and you can access the information available in this system. Even ICAI issued the notification for using the information available at the IU platform for external confirmations. This will very much beneficial for you, because you will get the access of the authenticated information. It will save time-consuming process of external confirmation of due through offline modes, like sending a letters, by sending a confirmation and waiting for a week's time to get a response on those letters. So it can help you to save you time. So this is the notification issued, announcement of the ICAI. It is issued by the Chairman, Auditing and Assurance Standard Board. So digital document execution, Raman sir already covered this thing, but just
maybe Chetan, you could quickly run through this and show them. There's no problem. We could just run through this. It's just 4 slides.
Yes, sir. So these are the participants. These are the current workflow for the executing contract. One is a totally physical workflow where normally people are drafting the contracts and printing. Average it is taking around 7 to 8 days over there. Then procurement of stamp duty, either by franking or it is going to the vendor, and vendors are not on Saturday, Sundays or non-official days. So 3 to 4 days in that time. Then getting the physical signature from all these signatories. If there is a more than one signatory, then taking signature from each and everyone. And later on the physical storage of the contract. So it is taking that much time. And in certain places there is a semi-automated flow. The pre-filled agreements are already there. It is normally taking 5-7 days, but still procurement of the stamp duty is 3-4 days, and digital e-signing 5-7 times. The process efficiency is still missing. So in letter below part is a 5 days of TAT on average, and in a physical workflow, it is a 15 days of average TAT on average for the any contract signing. So disadvantage of this current workflow is inefficient contract system resulting into a reduction of profitability and decrease productivity, because people are focusing this clerical work of getting this document. So lot of time and resources are being wasted over there. Long disbursement cycles are taking 4 to 15 days or 7 to 8 days to disburse the amount after the sanction letter because of this documentation. Immediate loan requirements are not addressed. Cost of storage is very high in many of the places. If you go through the vendors, those are doing the document storage, physical document storage. If you see, the document storage cost is very too high. If you want to retrieve the document, that is the 5 times or 6 times to the cost of the store of the document. Stamp paper payment procurement is still a bottleneck in the process, because many times there's a huge lines in queues in a bank to get the franking over there, or the vendor is not available, maybe his stock is over, so still that is a bottleneck over there. Each document requires several signatures, like already Raman sir explained. For the home loan document, 16 to 18 signatures. For in that way, for the personal loan, there are 7 to 8 signatures. So every document is being signed and with the initial at the bottom. So there are a lot of signatures involved in this thing. So we are introducing this digital document execution DDE, which is totally paperless, e-stamping with the e-stamping and digital sign. Digital sign, electronic contract, hash will be stored. So option of document storage is hash will be stored. Once it is hash is stored, so in future if you are putting a comma or dot in a document, system will say this document is tampered. So tamper proof it is there. Yeah. So how NESL DDE facilitated ease of doing business, because it will reduce the cost, safety and security. It will speed proceeding and process uniformity. So this is the end-to-end process over there. So workflow will be customer, banks and NBFC, data entry in a LMS system, or in case of operational creditors in your ERP system, you can create your own PDF file and just enter the other party's details and upload the PDF. System will send, if it is stamp is required, system will send a request to the stockholding or IGR for the stamp. You will do the document signing and document will be stored in our system. For the banking, we are in future exploring the option of uploading data to CERSAI also. So this is the whole DDE process over there. Benefits are whatever the earlier disadvantage, now it is a benefits for the DDE portal. So this will be like a sample stamp paper will be generated. These are the sample which will be appended on the first page of your PDF file, and later on your contract document what you uploaded as a PDF. So this will give this is the example how the document will be generated. Thank you.
So thank you, Chetan. That was very useful. I think you have covered all the aspects, and therefore, I think we'll take questions. I invite my colleague Shankar also to participate. Shankar, maybe you'd like to just take this question. Mr. Vishwas has asked a very nice question. I think you have dealt with it. Our government statutory dues also uploaded in the IU. So maybe Shankar, you can talk about it.
Yeah, in fact, the governments are coming forward to upload information of due, like overdue or unpaid earlier taxes, and including GST. But government of Maharashtra and government of Tamil Nadu are in discussion with us. We have gone and made presentations to the commissioner and commercial taxes. So they are now coming forward saying that the scheme of things under IBC, they will not be getting. They are in the 5th position when it comes to the waterfall of repayments, and they are with the unsecured advances loans below like the financial creditors and so. But still, they want to upload the information to get the default information. So whenever there is a default, which Chetan was saying, the default broadcast happens. So if a government comes and uploads all the unpaid statutory dues, they will be getting, whenever this company is with the government, if they are defaulting with the bank and the bank files a default with us, immediately the notification goes to all those creditors who are related to that debt. So now the government is also connected to that debt. So they will get immediately they will get a notification. So the government can take action, whatever security, the way they can collect the money, recover the money from the corporate debtor, or they may have to come and pay the claim. See, now what happens, many of these places, the advertisements happen in remote places. So the government even is not aware that default has been filed against one of their own defaulters. So they are not able to file the claim. So they have to file the claim and then they have to prove and write it off within the government if they have to do. Because of which already the governments are in discussion with us.
So I would really throw it open. I think we've taken your time, and thank you for the patient listening, but I would appreciate any more questions. Anybody has any comments, questions, suggestions, whatever it may be.
Okay.
Sir, I have a question. Over here, you were talking about the stamp duty, right? Who actually values the stamp duty? How is it being done?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it. If somebody could just repeat that question.
Who decides the stamp duty, you said, sir?
Stamp duty valuation.
No, that is, sir, sir, he is asking who will decide the stamp duty.
Yeah, so the stamp duty today, in fact, so typically today the bank affirms the amount of stamp duty to be paid. So if it's a banking transaction, typically the bank will mention how much is the stamp duty paper that needs to be acquired by the borrower, and many times the borrower is sent to acquire the stamp paper. But there are some states where they have an online calculator, so that is also something which is useful. But to answer your question, as per law, the either of the parties have to decide the amount of stamp duty, and accordingly make a purchase for stamp duty to that extent.
So NESL is only a facilitator and doesn't quantify the stamp duty.
No. So NESL is, as I said, purely an aggregator meant for numerous bulk users to use the NESL system of e-stamping and e-sign. So we will not get into what is the article or how much is the stamp duty. These are decisions which today also are taken by the parties to the contract.
There is a question from Mr. Ganesh. Statutory auditors registration only for IBC case or information utility information can be accessed by all auditors in practice?
Excellent question, Mr. Ganesh. Thank you, because this is something that we are very keen on trying to make the auditors more aware of. So, in fact, Mr. Sridharan, the chairman of NFRA, personally took interest and spoke to the auditing standards chairman and brought in the ability for auditors to use the information utility for the purpose of external confirmation. It has nothing to do with IBC. Though, of course, we are all borrowing, sections of the IBC law. This part of the IU work is really about, I would say, credit monitoring, credit checks, compliance checks. So it is nothing to do with an IBC case. Auditor only needs to prove to the IU that he is the auditor of a particular company, because IU must ensure that the information is going to the right person. So once the IU establishes that person A is the auditor of company XYZ, the entire information of that company is available to the auditor.
Sir, to add to
Then,
that,
yeah.
Sir, to add to that, the regulation permits an auditor to verify the information available in the IU of his own auditees. If you are an auditor of a corporate debtor, the information available with the IU can be accessed by you. That is about what is the liability, and if he has filed any balance sheet, that is financial statements with IU, you have the right to access that information and cross verify with whatever information he has given to you. That is one of the reasons we went, what Chetan pointed out. We also went to request changes in the company auditors rules and companies directors report. We have already requested MCA to make some amendments in that, so that it will become mandatory for the auditors to verify the closing balances. Recently you would have come to know in Bangalore, one company did not show some borrowing at all in their balance sheet. Such type of things can be avoided. The auditor verifies the information available with the user.
There is one more question, Shankar. You'd like to take this procedure for authentication of default?
Yeah,
it's a slightly long question answer, but
yeah,
go ahead.
Sir, as soon as an information, default information is filed by any of your creditors. Suppose, let's say you are the corporate debtor or you are the borrower, and the bank has one. You might have borrowed as a company from 4 or 5 banks, and whichever bank files a default against you, immediately a mail comes to you saying that so and so bank has submitted information, default information against you under these regulations, and all. You please verify and authenticate. So when you click on that link, you will have to come and register with us to access the information. It is only a communication which comes to you saying that somebody has filed a default against you. What is the default amount and all are not shown in the mail. So you click on the link given, come to our portal, then only you can access. Only once you are registered, you can access the information submitted by all your creditors, either standard, whether defaulted anything. Even this default amount will be shown there. So you have the option of either after verifying that you can say, okay, I authenticate this, the figure given default is correct. Or if you find any discrepancy, you can dispute that also. Once you decide to dispute, there's a text box available where you can see why you are disputing that information. Whether you have paid, it has happened in so many cases, they have settled after that information has been filed with us, you might have settled the default, or you would have closed even the account also. So you can always say that because of this reason, I am disputing this. So it goes back to the creditor, the submitter. So if you keep quiet, if you don't act on this communication, either you don't dispute or you don't authenticate, then what happens, there is a recent amendment to the regulations by IBBI, by which will send you 3 reminders with 3 days gap. So end of the 3rd reminder, if you still keep quiet, not doing anything, it will be considered to be deemed to be authenticated. And we will issue a record of default with the status that it is deemed to be authenticated. Can be accepted by the NCT as a proof of default. This is how it happens.
There is a very interesting question from Mr. Vishwas again, and I will, take that. Now, it's very important that the auditor receives the confirmation of balance from a creditor. Now, this is part of the auditing standards. It is something which is to be done by the auditor. In fact, I still recall the famous case of Satyam, where I was at that time in SEBI, and we found that the auditors had not, taken the pains of writing specially to each bank separately. So, we are all aware in the auditing profession that sometimes auditors do not address the letter to the bank and receive the information independently in their own office. That is what the auditing standards ask for. Now, what the information utility can do is really help the auditor with the balances as given by the bank. So the bank actually, having filed the balances at the end of March 31st, the outstanding amounts are available in the information utility as signed digitally by the banks. If the auditor finds that this information has not been obtained from the banks, then it can look into the information utility. But if the auditor qualifies the accounts and also finds that some information has been left out which is there in the utility, it only goes to say that certain balances which some creditors have filed have not been looked into or have been missed out by the auditor. So I truly feel that the auditor will be better defended in any future proceeding if they look at the balances on the information utility. It's a defense mechanism for the auditor that they can clearly defend themselves, saying that the bank has put the information in the IU, we have checked the IU balances, and therefore we have done a completeness check, because the banks are mandated to file the information in the IU. There is another question I will take from Mr. Balaji. He's saying the initiative has to come from the banks. I completely agree with you. You are 100% correct. In fact, it is the large banks, including the chairman SBI, who is waiting for more and more states to introduce the digital e-stamping. This entire convenience of moving from paper to digital is with the banks. But let us also remember that the banks will also lower the processing fee to the borrowers once the cost of documentation comes down drastically. So today banks can charge even up to 1,000, 1,500 for doing processing of a loan. Now those costs can certainly come down when everybody knows that there are digital platforms that are taking care of the loan documentation at a fraction of the cost. You can see our IU website, the NESL website already has got a full pricing of what it will cost the bank to execute the entire document on the IU platform itself. It's as low as 25 rupees for an unsecured loan to an individual. So at a fraction of a cost of 25 rupees, a bank can complete the entire documentation of an unsecured loan to a borrower. And you are 100% correct. The push and the drive towards digitization is coming from us along with the banks.
Thank you, Raman.
You're welcome.
I just one more comment that what you said, this loan agreement charges or fees is much more. They collect in the name of front end fee, if you are aware.
Correct.
So it's much higher than what you mentioned. So that benefit can be banks if the not only cost of the inputs and the manpower by the banks. If it is reduced, it will be the burden will be reduced on the borrowers also, I suppose.
Correct. I hope so. I certainly hope that competition and better practices, and I think the knowledge of the borrower, that borrower has knowledge that this is how the documentation is done. Because at the end of the day, the borrower himself is coming and being called to the IU platform for previewing the loan, accepting the loan document, and affixing the digital signature. So borrower is equally aware that the bank is, charge is it costs nothing virtually for the bank to complete the entire process. So I'm sure these good practices will come into our economy.
Thank you, Raman.
Thank you.
can we close down or roll it up? We have time.
Hello.
Yeah. Prithvi?
Sir, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Any more questions? Many participants, sir, have you got any personal questions, sir, Raman sir?
Yeah, Raman sir,
Huh.
yeah, Vivek here.
Yeah.
One question, since that the information can be used by statutory auditors. As a company secretaries in practice, we do secretarial audit where also the same information is needed. And also we do due diligence for banks, half-yearly due diligence for banks for a loan having some thresholds. So for this
Right.
also, company secretaries also can utilize this information, right? Can
That
you
is a
throw
very
some
good
light on that?
suggestion. So, I'll give an easier way out. So today, the borrower, that is a company who has got loans, or for that matter, a bank which has given the loans, they have got full access to their data. So a company has got full access to its entire loan data on the IU. Auditors are specially mentioned in the regulations as having separate access to the company data. So auditors are entitled, and I have given permission to auditors on the system to access the data of companies where they are auditors. But especially the company secretary has not been mentioned. Company secretary in its role, as you correctly said, should
Yeah.
probably get separate access. So maybe this point can be sent across to IBBI from HDSI also, saying that as a
Sure.
it is also one of the what you call the safeguards in the corporate sector. So it's a good point.
Sir, to add to
Thank you.
that,
Thank you.
till that is coming into the regulations, the regulation permits the submitter or the corporate debtor to authorize somebody else to access the information. In this case, the bank who has given you the assignment should give you the authority to access the information from the IU.
Got it. Thank you, Chetan.
Members can separately send questions to the BCICM. We will collect and then we can forward it to NESL and clarify. If there are any quick questions, we are open here. The team is here. Well, I think it's time for us to now close down. First of all, I thank the NESL team, Mr. Raman, the CEO, for giving an overall perspective of what NESL is all about, and also Mr. Chetan Lula, who went through the entire process of what NESL does and the process, how the DD is going to be taken forward, and the entire gambit of services offered to MSME, and also the Samadhan portal. So the system is going to stay here for long, and it's going to be the next generation repository, like how the DMAT and the other I think there's a lot of dependency on NESL going forward, and the importance. Now it's very nascent. I think the growth is going to be bigger, and more players are also going to come on this spot. And I thank all the members and participants who have taken their time and come over our portal and have dedicated their time here. And last but not the least, the Secretary of BCICI, Mr. Prithvi, Shyam and Rupa for being excellent. support on this. And I thank all the members of ICSI and Mr. Vivek Hegde for extending his support and joining with us on this seminar or workshop on NESL, IBC code, enable on DDE. I thank everybody and Mr. Raman. We will take this forward as a representative to the government, and I will I will contact Mr. Shankar on this, and we will initiate the process with the help of Mr. Devesh, who is now not here now present. And I think even Mr. Vikas also take this forward to their institute and see that the company secretary also becomes meaning of So thank you all for participating. All of you, thank you. And we will put that again with another big topic, hopefully in next 2 months. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for a patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.